I struggle to find comfort in Judaism, from the pain and loss that are inseparable from everyday life. My solitary quest begins at a time in the Jewish year when suffering itself is prevalent. I've chosen a difficult time in the year to explore my Jewish roots. It's the 3-week mourning period that culminates in the 9th of Av. And for me, feeling sad about events that happened thousands of years ago just feels forced. I'm going to go and see the rabbi, and maybe he can help me, he can guide me to feel sad and to get some meaning. I've read up about Tisha B'Av, the 3 weeks of mourning. I really don't connect with the sense of mourning and being sad. How can I be sad now about something that happened 2,000 years ago?
If Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, and the 3-week period of mourning before that was simply to mourn something that happened 2,500 years ago, the destruction of 2 temples 500 years apart on the same date, then there really is no reason why you should be sad or why I should be sad. But it really is more than that. Moses had elected to send 12 spies to check the land of Israel. They were about to enter the promised land. And those spies came back with a dismal report. The entire nation cried that night because they had despaired. And God said to them, because you cry for no reason tonight, I will give you reason to cry on this date for the rest of history. When we commemorate Tisha B'Av, that's a time of the year associated with suffering. It's a time we recall the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, the pogroms in Russia, and certainly the Holocaust. So we're sad for tragedies that were and for tragedies that are.
I leave Johannesburg to go to where the Holy Temple in Jerusalem once stood. Perhaps I will feel a trace of the close relationship that Jews once had with God before it was destroyed.
The 3 weeks start on the 17th of Tammuz, and that's the date that the outer walls of the old city were breached. It took 3 weeks for the Romans to get through the walls and destroy the holy temples. That ended on the 9th of Av, when the holy temple was set alight and burned to the ground, literally. Jews were chased from the city. A really tragic, tragic time for us Jewish people.
The Kotel is what remains of the outer western wall of the temple compound. I have always experienced a deep connection with the place, though I never understood its significance before. This time, I'm going to delay going there until I know more about it and how it's connected to Tisha B'Av.
I'm standing in front of a model of Jerusalem at the time of the Second Temple. It's very exciting to see what the temple looked like because I've read so much about it.
The Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, was considered so holy that only the high priest could enter it, and even then on only one day in the Jewish year, Yom Kippur. It housed the ark, which God commanded the Jews to make, to place the stone tablets with the 10 commandments in it, which God dictated to Moses.
The ark becomes a central expression of that portal of connection between God and us, because this is where miracles sort of stem from. And just shortly before the first temple was about to be destroyed by the Babylonians, King Josiah took that ark and he hid it in somewhere in the vicinity of the Temple Mount, and it's never been found until today.
Most of the community stood here to watch the service. Even though it was called the women's courtyard, women played a minor role in the temple.
The priests who serviced the temple, they were all male. In terms of contributing to the temple, there was no distinction between men and women. In terms of working in the temple, it was a man's domain. And it fits into the overall thinking within Judaism, which is that a male response to spirituality has got to be defined. And a woman's relationship with spirituality is intuitive and happens spontaneously.
I would have hoped that the temple was where all Jews would have been able to worship God as equals. If women played such a small role in the temple, why were the main Hulda gates, now in the Jerusalem Archaeological Park, named after a prophetess whom we know very little about? It seems to me that so much has not been recorded about women's contribution in Judaism. I hope that no more powerful woman will ever be lost again.
This is all that remains of the original temple entrance on the southern side, which was the main entrance. It's incredible to think that I'm sitting on the actual steps that my ancestors walked on 2,000 years ago to get to the Har HaBayit, the Holy Temple.
Thousands of Jews came here 3 times a year on Sukkot, Shavuot and Pesach to offer sacrifices to God.
Before we went up to the Temple Mount, the Har HaBayit, we would have to immerse in a ritual bath, a mikveh, to purify themselves, because the ground in the temple was so holy. In fact, one wasn't even allowed to wear shoes or carry money. There were over 70 mikvahot that have been found at this place. This particular mikveh has 2 layers of stairs. On the one side, it's a side to descend. The other side, one would ascend already purified, so neither touches each other and contaminates impurity to those who've been purified. There were thousands and thousands of people who would come through here on the high holy days to offer their sacrifices to God.
Most people tend to think that all those animals that were sacrificed in the temple were there to atone for our sins. The vast majority of sacrifices were not sin offerings. Sacrifices meant to address a human being and say, now hang on a second, you're going to do something now in a certain place, in a certain context, that is supposed to shift the way you deal with everything else. You have a choice now as a human. You could either elevate the sacrifice just to the rung of human, or you could turn it into a fire on the altar of God. Fire defies gravity. It breaks out of this world and goes upward. And that was what the sacrifice was meant to represent. I don't kill an animal unless it's for the sense of upgrading. Unless I'm going to add value to this animal as it did to the plant and as the plant did to the mineral, I dare not touch it. And then you could go through the ritual and be reduced to just a normal human being with all the vices of human beings, and you'd eventually lose your temple, which is what happened. Because ultimately, if you leave it up to people, they're going to fail.
Before the destruction of the temple, the Tyropian Way was the busiest route taken by pilgrims to get to the main entrance on the southern side. Here was once a massive arch which the Romans toppled. You can see the depression in these flagstones where it fell. Lining the road were small shops where traders sold animals, birds, and other items used in temple service. These rocks were pushed off the top of this wall. They've been left here since the destruction of the temple. Finally, from seeing these ruins, I get a better sense of what was lost. I can imagine the massacre of Jews that took place here, and the sudden desertion of a once spiritually thriving center.
Because it's a time of mourning. We do all sorts of things to remind ourselves that it's not a happy time. During that time, you don't buy new clothing. You don't have weddings. You don't go out to a concert or to watch a movie. You're not supposed to cut your hair. You're not supposed to shave. We also avoid during that time, as much as possible, wearing fresh clothes. What a lot of people do is they'll take all their things that are freshly laundered and before the 9 days begin, quickly put them on or quickly ruffle them up. So I'm not wearing the best clothes during that time. A clear sense of mourning. We avoid saying the Shehechiyanu blessing. And the translation is, thank God that we have lived to experience this occasion. Now, we don't want to say that during the 3-week period, because who wants to say, thank God we're mourning? Once you hit Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the next month, which is the month of Av, that begins a period known as the 9 days. 9 days leading up to Tisha B'Av, leading up to this climatic experience of mourning. Then it all intensifies. So from that time and on, for example, we avoid eating meat and drinking wine. The only exception being on Shabbos. On Shabbos, there is no such concept as mourning. On the Sabbath that precedes the Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, there's a special portion of the Torah that's read, and there's a clear sense that from that Shabbos until Tisha B'Av, the mourning is intensified even further, because it's a very focused and somber time.
I'm at Machane Yehuda right now, and that's the fresh fruit and vegetable produce market in Jerusalem. I'm here to buy fruit and veg because I'm in the 9 days of mourning, just before Tisha B'Av. The restrictions have gotten tighter. I can no longer eat meat, so I've come to see what I can get. סליחה, אפשר לקנות חצי מזה? אז כן, יופי. אני אקח חצי. כן, נכון. שמה זה חריפים? זה חריפים. היי. הריח טוב. I'm about to go into the old city through the Jaffa Gate and then go through the Jewish quarter to make my way down to the Western Wall. I'm really excited. I can't wait because this is a place that has so much meaning for Jewish people. The Jewish quarter in the Old City, what a holy place to be living in. And it's so much easier here to understand that sense of mourning between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av, because the remains of the destruction of the temple are right here on these people's doorstep. That feeling of sadness just pervades everything. In this city of ancient ruins,
I feel like a bit of an archaeologist, digging through the layers of the past to find a connection to my Judaism and to the sadness of this time of year. I finally arrive at the place which motivated me to start my journey to Jerusalem, to experience the Kotel, the Western Wall. I am moved beyond what I would have imagined. I feel awed and humbled here. The Kotel is one of the most powerful places that a Jew can pray at. I am writing prayers on behalf of myself and my family to put into the wall. I feel that because of the holiness of this place, my prayers cannot be overlooked. My journey has been an imperfect one. There were moments when I felt disconnected from the temple because I am a woman. It seems that our role was so much less than men's. But I did experience a spiritual connection that went beyond words in a place where God literally rested on earth. My challenge is to hold on to that energy back in South Africa. I'm going back to Johannesburg to experience the 9th of Av with the South African community. Before I leave, I say a prayer to safeguard my way home. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elokei avotenu, shetolichenu l'shalom, v'tatzidenu l'shalom, v'tadrichenu l'shalom, v'tagienu limchoz cheftzenu, l'chaim u'lesimcha u'leshalom. It is customary to eat an egg dipped in ash before the fast of Tisha B'Av begins. The ash symbolizes the destruction and ruins of the temple. The destroyed temple, a reflection of the broken world we live in. Jews are not meant to wear leather shoes. We are not meant to greet one another so as not to detract from the mourning. At Shul, during the evening service, Eicha, or Lamentations, a series of mournful prayers is read.
Rabasi bagoyim, sarasi bamdinois, hayesalomas, v'choy sivke balaylo, v'dimaso alecheyo, ein lo menachem, mikol oyaveho, kol reho bigabagduva, oyavirebanav.
At midday on Tisha B'Av, the tone of mourning changes to hope as we anticipate the building of the third temple. I understand that Tisha B'Av is not about a destroyed building. It is about mourning the close connection which we had with God that was experienced in this place. Within the concept of mourning is the knowledge that the third temple will be a perfect balance between God and man, and the anticipation of the Messianic era which it will usher in. It is said that the 9th of Av will be the birthday of the Messiah.
She